Hi, this is Tim at the 1916 Company. Welcome and thank you for logging on. Today, we're waking up with watches and everything is for sale. Reach out to me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com. We buy what we sell what we buy, and we are always looking to build inventory. So, sell one watch, sell your entire collection. We pay cash, we pay fast, we walk you through the process and make it a no-brainer. We will buy your entire collection, no upper limit on value paid. We also love to trade and can sometimes offer higher value on a trade than an outright sale. To buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. I am still T. Mosso at thewatchbox.com. Let's jump into one of my favorite new watches of 2023 from Tag Heuer. Yes, Tag Heuer. This is the Carrera Tourbillon Chronograph. Now, some version of this watch has been on the market for the last 8 years, but here's the thing. Newly revitalized with the glass box profile, this watch is no longer the Hublot Junior of 2016, 17, 18, and now feels much more like the most deluxe version of the long-running classical Carrera, and it's more wearable, too. 42 millimeters in diameter. The watch is about 48.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip in stainless steel. With throw it on my wrist of 16 centimeters circumference, you can see how nicely it does wear. A lot of the thickness of the watch, it's about 14.6 millimeters. It's in that distinctive glass box vaulted sapphire. The lugs are fairly short, and by Carrera standards, they wear true to size. Normally, Carreras always wear a little bit big. This feels like a 42 and looks like a 42 on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. The watch is a full-fledged sports watch, which means steel, automatic winding, 100-meter water resistance. When we turn off the light, no shortage of luminescence. Of course, if you're a watch fan, you're probably already a car guy, and you know that these are also the famous Gulf racing colors of white, blue, and orange. And while this is not officially a Gulf racing tribute, it's a Gulf racing tribute. One element I really like about the glass box is that you've got this vaulted sort of convex track outboard for reading minutes and seconds, and then it inverts and goes concave where it joins to the applique indices, and you can see that they cut into little scalloped sections of the bezel, the inner bezel, or the outer dial, I guess we could call it. It's a wonderful little piece of nuance. There are chapterings around the seconds, chronograph hours, and chronograph minutes, and this is a 1-minute tourbillon, so we can use it as running seconds. The dial has excellent depth and luster and detail. Taking a quick look at the tourbillon, we'll get the minute hand out of the way here. You can see it as a flying tourbillon, so no upper bridge to block your view. It's also fairly high beat by tourbillon standards at 28,800 vibrations per hour, but the point here really is chronometry, as this is a COSC certified tourbillon, a rare breed. Very few tourbillon manufacturers want to actually put their mechanism to the test. Tag Heuer, to its credit, put its money where its mouth was and certified its tourbillon is not just beautiful, but also very, very accurate. Now you can see that it's free sprung, so it's adjusted extremely precisely using eccentric masses on the rim of the balance. That's generally how modern movements are adjusted. And you can see it uses a vertical clutch, so there's no extraneous motion to the seconds hand when you start this up. And if you wish, you can leave the chrono running full time with no additional wear and tear to the movement. That's the advantage of a vertical clutch. You can see that the movement also includes a column wheel for crisp function selection. And while it is not artisanal, it is attractive, and it provides 65 hours of power reserve. The action of the crown is quite pleasing. There's very little dead angle between the time you start turning the crown and the time the hands start moving. This represents outstanding value in a complicated chronograph. Think of what you'd pay for a longer turbograph, and you have a good sense of the value proposition here. No, it's not finished or built like a Longa, but it's just as durable, will last just as long, and frankly, is a hell of a lot more swimmable. This could be your daily as a tourbillon. Now, let's say you want something that's a little bit more exotic even than that. Well, in 2017, Girard Perregaux fired a shot across the bow of Audemars Piguet with this, the Laureato skeleton, and it is a magnificent thing. First of all, if you look at some of these bridges, you could see that not only are they beautifully satinated on their tops, but the interior beveling is as good as anything that you'll find from the likes of boutique independents, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and others who play in the ultra-luxury sports watch space. Look at how broad these bevels are. Look at the satination across the nickel anthracite tops of these bridges. And then look at how many of these inward angles we have where bevels meet in sharp creases. You can particularly see two right there. We'll move over to the opposite side. You can see how deep that one is right there. And then its counterpart right next door. That takes a long time to execute. And this watch is full of them. Open barrel, so you can see the coiling of the mainspring. We'll do a quick lume shot so you can see that the hands are quite luminescent. Now, it's a 42mm case with a screw-down crown. It is 100 meters water resistant, so this is a viable sports watch, full integrated bracelet. Remember, the Laureato is not a Johnny-come-lately. The first integrated bracelet Laureato arrived in 1975, so this is part of the charter class of integrated bracelet sports watches from the golden age of the genre, or perhaps at this point I should say the first golden age of the genre. Now, the quality of the finishing, including the skeletonization and internal finishing of the rotor, is world-class on the back. The basic movement here is a GP 1800, which means it gives you 54 hours of automatic winding power reserve, and again, all of this water resistant down to 100 meters. It wears nice, it wears flat. It is right around 11 millimeters thick, which means it's incredibly compact, and you can see the downward canted lugs really mitigate fit issues. I could recommend this wrist, well, 14 centimeters circumference or larger. My wrist is 16, just for reference, but you can see how much clearance I have with the lugs nowhere near the edge of my wrist on either side, and you better believe it'll fit underneath the cuff. This is a wonderful alternative to Audemars Piguet in the skeleton integrated sports watch class. Frankly, you're not giving up any finishing quality by going for the Girard Perregaux, and there's probably fewer of these in circulation than there are AP skeletons. Now, if you want to court controversy, I have a $209,000 limited edition Hublot that you're going to love or hate. Now, I love it, but this is the Hublot Big Bang Tourbillon Purple Sapphire, and this is a 2022 launch in purple sapphire with the entire case made of the material that's generally used just for the crystals over dials. Now, we've got everything you would expect in a Big Bang. It's a big multi-piece case. It has some architectural elements, almost like the scaffolding of a building under construction, not yet finished. You can see the pillars for the assembly screws. Everything, including the movement, is visible laterally through the case. And of course, this is the most scratch-resistant material used in watchmaking, so you will never get a mark. You can also change the look if you want, because there's a push-button quick release for the strap. The strap, I believe to be silicone, because it's ultra gummy, and I do mean ultra gummy. It is incredibly soft and translucent. We have a folding clasp here with twin trigger release. You could see that the watch includes, on the reverse side, an elaborate train from a skeletonized barrel all the way down to the tourbillon. All of this has been silvered and mostly satinated. There are very few polished highlights. It's got a 3-day power reserve. Flip it back to the dial side, and you can see what appears to be a flying tourbillon, but looks can be deceiving. Look carefully, and you can see that there are actually sapphire plates over the mechanism. Some of them hold indices and numerals, and one of them holds the upper pivot of the tourbillon. So it is effectively a flying tourbillon in that there's no blockage or obstruction from the view of the top of the tourbillon. It's covered with a bridge, but the bridge is completely transparent, so it's like a flying tourbillon in that regard. Look carefully, and you can see that this automatic winding watch uses a micro rotor that sits up at 12 o'clock. We'll do a quick lume shot so you can evaluate the luminescence of the watch. It's actually pretty well lumed, all things considered, and it is feather light. Sapphire is an extremely light material. Combined with silicone and all of the metal hardware in titanium, this 50-piece limited edition really does feel as toy-like as it looks. Fit is excellent. I could recommend this watch for as small as 15 centimeters circumference. You can see the lugs of the case are not overlapping the edge of my wrist, and the lugs of the case angle downwards, so they sort of wrap around your wrist. If you've got a hankering for something with an in-house caliber, immense sophistication of engineering, an offbeat persona, luminescence, automatic winding, rarity, horological credibility, quality, and a great wrist feel that's comfortable and ultralight. This is a way to go. This is going to challenge people's conceptions of Hublot as a recaser of ETA movements sold at prices approaching Audemars Piguet. This is legitimate. This is a high horology watch that's built and priced to match its billing. An incredible timepiece from Hublot, speaking to the quality that they've been executing in their manufacture in Nyon since they officially opened up their own factory back in 2009 and integrated their high horology partner B&B Concept back in 2010. A really neat watch on many fronts. From 2023, we have a celebration of the opening of the first Moser factory stores in Shanghai and Hong Kong. This is the Streamliner Flyback Boutique Edition, only available through the two Moser boutiques. So we've got the Matrix Green Fume Fade dial from the original Green Dragon Streamliner Center 2nd of 2020, a 42.3 millimeter 5N rose gold case that is 120 meters water resistant. You can see this dramatically boxed and cambered sapphire, how Moser evacuates its case flanks and internally finishes them. You've got a almost pocket watch style layout where the chronograph can be set and reset using these two pushers. Now, it is a flyback, so when you reset, you restart without first stopping. That's great for timing events that occur in rapid succession. You can see we have a racing dial, styled checkered hash marks outboard, similar to seen on 1970s pieces, particularly from Omega. We also have a Lemania 5100-like center minutes hand, so over time that will slowly scroll over 60 minutes, giving you more chronograph minutes than you'll typically get on a regular chronograph with a 30-minute register. Again, all of this 120 meters water resistant, and boldly, Moser claims you can use the chrono underwater. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but that is their claim. You can see super subtle branding, Moser in clear lacquer on the dial with global light blocks of ceramic lume on the hands. Now turn it all over. You've got the latest version of the Chronograph caliber. Moser's original version of this was a machine called HMC 902, and it had 54 hours of power reserve. This now has 72 hours of power reserve and a new reference number. It is the HMC 907, and it's automatic. Where's the rotor? It's under the dial. So the rotor sits under the dial, and then on the reverse side, you can see that we have a chronograph that includes a column wheel and what's called the Agen clutch, which is designed to allow for the chronograph to engage and be relatively shock resistant in its operation. Now, there is still a little bit of jump when you start the chrono. For the most part, it starts seamlessly, as you could see, but every once in a while, there will be subtle reminders that it is still a lateral clutch. But what makes it distinct here is that it's very shock resistant, so teeth will mesh and stay meshed, regardless of the condition of impact that the watch receives, meaning that the seconds hand is not going to jump around a lot or misalign with the actual time due to impact. You can see the barrel has a spectacularly solarized ratchet wheel, and according to Jean-Marc Viderecht of Agenor, he's been quoted in the press saying that this movement would meet the standards of the Geneva hallmark if he bothered to get the certification. And of course, it's made in the city and canton of Geneva for H. Moser and C. That is where Agenor is, but you could see a combination of satination, beveling, media blast, black polish, perlage, striping, all of it visible across these components, which beautifully fill the case back. We have a full deploying clasp, and then we have a strap that's a combination of leather and also of textile. Again, on the wrist, 42.3 millimeters. This is the first Streamliner to include a strap as standard, and you can see how it wears. It's big, but it's not excessively large. And look how far those lugs are from the edge of my wrist on both sides. This wears surprisingly well on a small wrist, and it's all down to how much clearance I have from the edge of the lug to the edge of my wrist, and I'm pulling this pretty tight. You can see that's pretty dramatic. Really good fit from Moser. But let's say you want something that's a little bit more discreet. Well, from German Swiss to full German, we have discretion in the form of a 33-piece edition from Longuntina of Dresden. Now, in 2021, they launched the Hektor. The Hektor, their first ever sports watch in steel. You see it right here. There were 3 versions, each in 33 pieces for $99 total. Now this is the silver gray dial version, but the dial itself is made of sterling silver, so it's precious metal. The hands and the indices are made of white gold, with the exception of the second hand, which is made of rose gold. The watch is 40 millimeters by about 11.2 millimeters thick, and if we go from lug to lug, the total distance across the wrist is 52.2, and you can see that the bracelet is held on using screws and bars, and the quality of the bracelet and the clasp, very impressive, very imposing. The dial features several different focal planes and textures and shapes and a couple of different tones, and there is a little bridge that sits below the petticoat style hands. Yes, that is what they're calling them, petticoat. Now taking a look, you can see the motion works, so the gears that drive the hands, and then there's this bridge external to them that's satin on its top and beveled on its edge with a beautiful mirror finished screw right at its center. The watch wears easily. It's not too big, it's not too heavy, it's comfortable, and it sits flat. Taking a quick look in profile, I think Lange & Theinet did a better job of integrating their house design codes into a sports watch design than their larger rival at Lange. Remember, Lange & Theinet is not Lange. This, in my opinion, is an aesthetic triumph, and the Odysseus is maybe half a triumph. Turning it all over, it uses a UWD 33 movement. So this is called caliber 33, and it's a large movement, 33 millimeters in diameter. It's made by Uhrwerke Dresden, which is a company owned by Lange & Theinet. And you've seen this movement in other applications. For example, the initial Infinity series from Joshua Shapiro used this movement, and also some of the in-house caliber manual wind ornate and dress style Zinn watches use this caliber. We have individual finger-style bridges for the drivetrain. Take a look at the finishing on the ratchet wheel. Mirrored hollows that are bright polished and truly specular finished. Solarization on the outer face and then polished teeth. You can see the same treatment lavished on the crown wheel. And then we've got a large slow beating balance. Sort of a grayscale industrial aesthetic here, and you can see that there's very good depth to the movement. That's most evident from the side. And you can also see this elaborate spring-style media-blasted hacking lever that sits adjacent to the balance right there. That is a quirky-looking hacking lever, but the watch does have hacking seconds functions. You can see the quality of the case and the finishing of the case is uniformly high all the way around. The quality of the bracelet and the detailing of the bracelet just as impressive. And unlike Patek bracelets, you can see right here, removable links are fixed by screws. This is the first Hektor that's crossed my desk, and I have to say, overall, it's been quite impressive. It's more solid than I expected it to be, with the quality of the dial significantly higher than I perceived in the photos. A really cool way to get into German watches while still sticking to steel bracelets and escaping the somewhat frumpy house style of Lange & Theinet's dress watches, Lange & Söhne's dress watches, and also Glashütte Original's dress watches. This is contemporary German sports watch done right. All right, so this is interesting to me because launched in 2004, the RM5 from Richard Mille represented RM's move into the mainstream after launching its first watches as extravagant complications starting in 2001. So the RM5 is approximately 37 millimeters wide and then just over 45 millimeters long. It's a smaller version of the subsequent RM10. And one interesting feature is that these early Volgine cases were marked to 100 meters, whereas later they'd be marked to 50 meters. That's something I always found interesting. The tonneau case shape here present and correct. There's no mistaking this for anything but an RM, even from 10 paces. You can see how the curvature of the tonneau really works on your wrist right there. Easy to see. The curvature matches your wrist, and this is a great watch if you do have a smaller wrist or you don't like the size of the RM10s or the RM11s, or you're a lady who wants an RM but you don't want to wear one of the frilly pieces designed for women. This is the way to go. The design language is incredibly strong. The watch is very practical, being 100 meters water-resistant, automatic winding, and very well loomed. Hacking seconds, it's got a quick set date, and on the reverse side, you can see it's got a Vaucher-based movement. Now, Vaucher, which is the movement arm of Parmigiani, makes these movements for RM, 5-position adjusted, just like you'd find on something along the lines of a chronometer. Twin barrels, 55 hours of power reserve. This is the variable inertia rotor. You can see that we have these two white gold wings. Moving them in and out changes the polar moment or turning force of the rotor, which has an impact on the winding efficiency. So if you're like me and you work at a desk, you might tell your RM watchmaker to set it for high winding efficiency to capture all of the motion in terms of spring energy. Now, if you're very active, let's say you're a polo player, you're playing golf, tennis, the watch is going to be winding pretty heavily. So you might want to tell your watchmaker, your Richard Mille watchmaker, to slow the winding system to better preserve the mechanism. Now you can see the Vaucher star on the base plate right there. That's how you know where it came from. And it does have hacking and a quick set date function. The bridges and the plates are all in titanium, which lightens up the movement. And then you can see the 4 mounting points, each one of those with rubber bumpers. The rubber bumpers providing a shock-resistant buffer between the case and the movement to preserve everything. And you can see again the movement visible from the dial side with lovely grayscale tones, giving this a very machine age aesthetic. The stepped frame outboard mounting the indices, that's actually made of carbon fiber. So here you have sapphire, rubber, titanium, carbon fiber, and rose gold. This is the RM5. Now normally I end with the most spectacular watch, and this was a toss-up. Even as I was showing you the other ones, I didn't know what would be the last watch. So I'm going to go with a watch here that was a 2016 version of a 2013 launch. This is the Greubel Forsey Double Balancier. Now it is a double balance, 43.5 millimeter by 13.6 millimeter thick double balance watch, very similar to the Philippe Dufour duality of the 1990s, but with the key difference that this uses an original innovation, a spherical differential. You have 2 balances, each one inclined at 35 degrees. So these are always going to be at different orientations. Because the balance averages the rate of the 2 together, the differential error that these will experience, as they are always in opposite orientations due to gravity, that error from side to side cancels out in the differential, which ensures constant running and absolutely exact timekeeping is achieved for the seconds, the minutes, and the hours. Now, it has stacked barrels, which you can see here, and it is a manual wind with a 72-hour power reserve. You can see it has a power reserve indicator. Individual barrels, we'll move the hands out of the way here, but the individual barrels can be viewed from this angle. You could see solarization on the barrel cover, that the bridge at center features perfect mirror finishing, really sharp and deeply drawn inward angles, and there's 4 of them on that bridge. Take a look at each balance bridge. Do you notice how they've been rounded across their top and mirror finished? Not easy to do in steel. Adjusted in 6 positions, this watch leaves no stone unturned. And you can see that not only do we have overcoils for positional constants, but we have a free-sprung architecture that allows for precise adjustment and resilience against shock. You could see that overcoil perhaps better from this angle, as well as the quality of the finishing on the bridge. But if you look at the bridge for the escapement below, you'll notice that the bridge for the anchor and the escape wheel has been micro-beveled on its side and satinated on its top. And this setup includes pillars for the assembly holding the bridge. And you can see that each pillar has a sort of hyperboloid shape and mirror finishing. Taking a quick look at the base plate, you can see it's been frosted using a wire brush to give it that granular finish. And then the structure of the differential has black polished surfacing with golden chatons holding pivot jewels like some grand old pocket watch. You can see the edges of its structure going down. These have been satinated or brushed on their sides. And then I don't know how well you can see the interior of the differential, but it is spherical. And you can see that there's a hand on top. The differential makes 1 rotation every 4 minutes as it averages out the effects of the 2 balances. And so that's what's actually being depicted there, the passage of 4 minutes. We'll do a loom shot so you can see the watch in the dark, and you might be impressed that this Greubel Forsey has pretty well-loomed hands. Turn it all over, and you can see on the back we have even more of that wire brush frosted surfacing, as well as the underside of the differential and one of the underlying springs of the mechanism. You can see its bridge from the underside also features golden chaton, but we have more of them in the train. And you can see the arbor for the barrels right there, an enormous diameter holding the pivot, its jewel, and that golden cup, a nod to the way pocket watches used to be made. You can also see that this is a tribute to pocket watches generally, as this frosting is a pre-Côte de Genève, pre-modern era treatment, like something you would have seen on a pocket watch in the 19th or 18th century. Historically, frosting would have been done with acid. Today, it's a little bit safer to use a steel bristle brush, much like the brush you use to clean a grill. You dab from the top hundreds of times to make all of these little indentations. I promised you that this is a more wearable Greubel Forsey, and truly it is. We do have a full clasp right here, which is an impressive piece in its own right. But note the lack of super graphics. All of that superfluous verbiage and text on a conventional Greubel, not present here. Now the strap is very stiff, but you can see that the case does fit my wrist. So if your wrist is my size or larger, 16 centimeters circumference and up, this relatively thin 43.5 millimeter rose gold Greubel is for you. So what could possibly be more spectacular than that? Well, how about a watch that grew out of an only watch piece unique? Launched in 2005, this is the de Bethune DBS. The DBS is a reference to pocket watches, pendant watches, clocks, vintage wristwatches, all of those things. And you could see de Bethune's unique balance at the bottom, a combination of primarily blued titanium and platinum masses. Now you could zoom back in the video to just before the balance started up when I moved the hands out of the way, and you could see how it's a non-annular balance. That is, it's not a circle. It's not a perfectly unbroken ring. It's like two crossed yokes. That is because Denis Flageolet, who's patented no fewer than 10 individual balances, he is the watchmaking genius behind de Bethune, every design to reduce the effects of temperature change on timing, to maximize the total percentage of mass in the rim, and to reduce, however slightly, the effects of aerodynamic drag on timing. You could see this was the de Bethune model that first brought the barrel, the escapement, the balance, and the balance bridge to the dial side, as we have the company's DB 2004 movement that originally bowed in the DB15 perpetual calendar. Now its twin barrels are on the dial side. We have triple parachute, that's patented, 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs, plus the balance and the escapement on the dial side, so you can appreciate all of this without having to remove the watch and put it on your wrist. Another patented element, the spherical moon phase. You could see the movement transfers motion down using bevel gears. One half of the sphere is blued steel, one half is white palladium. It only needs to be adjusted once every 122 years. There is on the reverse side a power reserve indicator, and it tracks 6 days of power reserve. You can see this watch in platinum, 42.7 millimeters in diameter, though only about 45.5 millimeters from lug to lug and 11.4 thick. It's a very wearable watch. The balance is patented, the hairspring curve is patented, the shock protection system is patented, the moon phase display is patented, and the two barrels with their 6 days of power reserve, the manual wind, but they cannot accidentally be overwound. You could see satin finish on the flanking springs of the triple parachute with black polishing on both the hands and the balance bridge. You could see we have stripes laid down on the Côte de Bethune, and each side mirrors the other. So the reversing of the wheel that lays the stripes takes place about midway across. So you could see these stripes mirror these stripes. See how these have their dark face pointing inward? You move across the stripe and then you greet the dark stripe. Well, it reverses on the other side. You move to the left across the stripe and then you reach the dark gradient. That's what's meant by Côte de Bethune. It's mirrored stripes from side to side. Taking a quick look, you can see that even the teeth of the ratchet wheel have been micro-beveled and that all screw heads have been black polished. Take another look and you'll appreciate that even the edges of these blackened bridges have been mirror finished. So the beveling on the bridges is as good as you'll find anywhere, including Greubel Forsey. You have a combination of a matte sort of media blasted finish on the hour track with drilled minutes inboard and then cabochon of polished grade 5 titanium acting as the hours. The crown, which is, by the way, a screw down to protect it from this hinge lug system, it's a pleasure to manipulate. You can see I can easily pull the crown out and set the watch, which is a pleasure to do. It has very little dead angle. Look at the tears at the base of the hands. Look at that attention to detail. You can see those tears every part of the watch designed by Denis. He is a true auteur in the watchmaking sense, the same way Hitchcock was in filmmaking and Brian Wilson was in music. It's deeply special stuff. And of course, you can wind it, enjoy the operation of the ratchet wheel on the front and the traversing of the power reserve indicator on the back. Throw it on the wrist, give you a sense of it. It's a watch that was very compact, super slim across the wrist and nice and thin. It's an easy watch to wear for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, and only a few dozen of these were made. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.